The girl sat by the window, her hands wrapped tightly around the chipped coffee cup as though it might anchor her nerves. She had chosen this little cafe because it was affordable, cozy, and not too crowded, perfect for a first meeting. But the truth was harsher. She only had $5 in her wallet, and even that had been carefully saved over the week. She wore her best dress, though it was simple and a little faded, hoping it would be enough to hide her modest life. Her blind date sat across from her, leaning back in his chair, scrolling through his phone as if she weren't even there. He barely glanced up when the waitress came, ordering himself a fancy latte and a pastry without hesitation, not once asking what she might like. She managed a small smile, hiding her nervousness, and ordered the cheapest black coffee on the menu, knowing it was all she could afford. As the minutes stretched on, she stirred her drink slowly, her mind racing. Would he notice that she hadn't touched anything else? Would he laugh if he knew the truth, that this was her first date in years, and all she had was $5 to her name? Every sip felt heavy, not with taste but with the fear of being seen as less, of being judged for the things she could not change. Her heart sank as her date kept his eyes on the glowing screen in his hand, never really seeing her at all. At the table just a few feet away, a man sat quietly, sipping his espresso, but his gaze often drifted toward the girl by the window. He wasn't staring out of rudeness, but there was something in her demeanor that drew him in. The way she tried to smile despite the awkward silence across her table, the way her fingers nervously tapped the rim of her cup as if trying to distract herself from the sting of being ignored. He noticed the contrast. Her date scrolling endlessly, showing no interest, while she sat there fighting to keep her dignity intact. The man was sharply dressed, his navy suit tailored perfectly, but there was a softness in his eyes, the kind that didn't come from boardrooms or power, it came from being a father. Beside him, a small sketchbook and a half-finished glass of milk suggested his daughter had just been there, whisked away by the nanny to let him finish a quick meeting. The traces of her presence still lingered, reminding him of his own struggles balancing wealth and love, success and loneliness. He leaned back, pretending to check his watch, but his thoughts stayed on her. He saw how she lifted her cup slowly, taking small sips as though she needed the drink to last the entire evening. He caught the flicker of disappointment in her eyes when her date barely acknowledged her, and something stirred in his chest. He had sat in rooms worth millions, negotiated deals that could change industries, but here in this simple cafe, watching a young woman wrestle silently with her pride and circumstances, he felt something more powerful than money. It was empathy. And beneath that empathy was curiosity, the kind that made him want to know her story. Her date suddenly pushed back his chair with a careless scrape against the wooden floor, glancing at his watch as though he'd wasted enough of his precious time. "I've got somewhere better to be," he muttered, not even bothering to meet her eyes. Before she could respond, he slipped his phone into his pocket and strode out of the cafe, leaving behind the half-eaten pastry and a bill resting in the little leather folder at the edge of the table. For a long second, she just sat frozen, her breath catching in her throat. Her eyes darted to the folded check, then back to her nearly empty wallet. The truth crashed over her like a wave. $5 wouldn't even cover the drinks, let alone the pastry he had so casually ordered. Heat rushed to her cheeks, shame mixing with panic. She wanted to disappear into the floorboards, to escape before anyone noticed the reality of her situation. The waiter approached, polite but firm, reaching for the check. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around her wallet. Just as she fumbled to open it, a deep voice cut through the air, steady, confident, yet unexpectedly gentle. "It's on me." She looked up in surprise. The man from the next table stood there, his presence calm yet commanding. With a smooth gesture, he slipped a sleek black card onto the tray before the waiter could say a word. The waiter nodded and walked away, leaving her staring at the stranger. Her heart pounded. You didn't have to," she began, but the words tangled on her tongue. His eyes met hers, kind yet unreadable, and for the first time that evening she felt seen, not dismissed or overlooked. Gratitude flooded her, mingled with disbelief. Nobody had ever stepped in for her like this, not when it mattered. The humiliation that had been tightening around her chest loosened, replaced by something she hadn't expected to find in this night at all: hope. He didn't walk away after paying the bill. Instead, he pulled out the empty chair across from her and sat down, as though he had every right to be there, yet his presence felt more like comfort than intrusion. She blinked, unsure if this was real or just another twist of the evening. His suit spoke of wealth, but his eyes, warm, steady, and strangely vulnerable, told a different story. "I hope you don't mind," he said, his voice low and sincere. "You looked like you could use some company." For a moment, she hesitated, her instinct to guard herself rising quickly. But something in his tone disarmed her. It wasn't pity, she had seen pity before, and it stung. This was different. This was understanding. She managed a small smile, though her voice trembled. "It's been a rough night. I could tell," he admitted softly, then leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "I know what it feels like to struggle. People look at me now and see success, but there were years when I was scraping by, wondering if I'd ever make it." His lips curved in the faintest smile. "And now, raising my daughter alone, I still have days where I feel like I'm failing, no matter how much I achieve." Her eyes widened slightly. He wasn't just a polished stranger offering a good deed, he was a man carrying his own burdens, speaking them aloud without shame. The cafe around them seemed to fade, the clinking cups and soft chatter blurring into the background. She found herself opening up in ways she hadn't planned. "I thought tonight might change something for me," she confessed. "But it only reminded me of what I don't have." He shook his head gently. "Don't measure yourself by what someone else fails to see. The right person won't overlook you, they'll recognize your worth immediately." His gaze lingered on her with quiet intensity, as though those words weren't abstract advice but meant for her specifically. For the first time that night, she laughed softly, the tension easing from her shoulders. It wasn't the night she expected, but perhaps it was the night she needed. And as he asked the waiter for 2 fresh cups of coffee, this time without her worrying about the cost, she realized her story wasn't ending in disappointment. It was only beginning, with someone who saw her not as the girl with $5 but as someone worth knowing.